What we want to talk about now is a big issue that that came up very, very recently in the U.S.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the Adnan Syed case?
Vaguely, yes. I have seen it pop up a couple of times, and I've seen that there's been videos that have been done on it. I haven't watched them fully, but I do know some detail.
Flux in the house. Flux says Hayden is amazing.
Thank you, Flux. I try.
Flux, you're pretty darn amazing yourself. You know that.
That is true.
So Adnan Syed was convicted of some nasty, nasty stuff
Mm.
a long time ago, when the earth was green, the prettiest animals you've ever seen.
Back before the unicorns didn't make it onto the ark.
Exactly. Baltimore. A Baltimore judge on Monday, and this was Monday as of September 20th, so a week ago, a little over a week ago, I guess about 10 days ago, a Baltimore judge on Monday ordered the release of Adnan Syed after overturning Syed's conviction for the 1999 murder of high school student Hae Min Lee, Korean American. Korea was interested in this case back then and now because it involved a Korean American girl. A case that was chronicled in the hit podcast Serial, a true crime series that transfixed listeners and revolutionized the genre. At the behest of prosecutors who had uncovered new evidence. Prosecutors uncovering new evidence after 22, 23 years. Read between the lines. This was evidence. It wasn't uncovered out in the wild. This
was buried.
Whenever
how dusty was the file that this supposed evidence was located in?
Exactly. When they discover evidence after 23 years, they discover it in the filing cabinet.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what that means. And occasionally it'll mean that they ran a new DNA test, which I believe they did in this case as well. But Circuit Court Judge Melissa Finn ordered that Syed's conviction be vacated as she approved the release of the now 41-year-old, who has spent more than 2 decades behind bars.
More than half his life behind bars, and they've had it overturned. Fuck's sake.
There were gasps and applause in the crowded courtroom as the judge announced her decision. Finn ruled that the state violated its legal obligation to share evidence that could have bolstered Syed's defense. That right there is a fundamental principle of discovery in every law-abiding nation based on Anglo-American law that I know of. You have an obligation to turn over everything to the opponent, whether it's good for your case or sinks your case like the Titanic. You have an obligation as a prosecutor to turn over evidence that would exculpate the suspect or the defendant, or would prove his innocence, or would be damaging to your case. You have a legal duty and obligation to turn that over, and these people didn't. I assume it's the same in Australia.
Absolutely, it is.
You have the same disclosure rules in civil and criminal things.
Of course, everything gets turned over, whether or not it's damaging to your own case or not. You hand everything over that's within your power, and that unless it falls under the legal professional privilege, parliamentary privilege, or very other limited circumstances, everything gets handed over.
Korea does not have that type of a disclosure system. We don't have that kind of discovery system. There's no mandatory discovery per se. So you can submit whatever you want. You can keep back the things that are negative to you, but if they ask for it and you don't give it, then the judge can infer negatively from that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you don't tell them you've got it, they don't know what you've got. So
so the other side has to come across it the other side has to come across it in another circumstance to prove that they had it. Far out.
But it's it's a gut-wrenching feeling when you have a great case and then you see one email where somebody says exactly the opposite of what your case needs to hear, and you think, crap, I have to turn this over to the other side. But you have that obligation, and especially prosecutors, they have to turn over all documents that show the innocence of the suspect. And they did not do that in this case. They hid evidence. Finn ruled that the state violated its legal obligation to share evidence that could have bolstered Syed's defense. She ordered Syed to be placed on home detention with GPS location monitoring. The judge also said the state must decide whether to seek a new trial date or dismiss the case within 30 days. And can you imagine being him and hearing the words, "All right, Mr. Syed, you're free to join your family"?
What would terrify me is that hearing those words and then within the next 30 days hearing that they're going to push forward with another trial.
Yeah.
Having that looming over my head, that would suck. But knowing that you could see your family, give them hugs, whatever, after 20 years of being in prison for something you potentially didn't do, that'd be an incredible, amazing feeling.
But minutes later, Syed emerged from the courthouse and flashed a smile as he was shepherded to a waiting SUV through a sea of cameras and a cheering crowd of supporters. Syed did not speak during the hearing, nor did he address the reporters outside afterwards. But after the hearing, his lawyer, Eric Suter, described his reaction to the decision, saying he said he couldn't believe it's real. Now, when we look at this, not only are the prosecutors screwing around with a potentially innocent man by hiding and burying evidence for more than 2 decades, think about the victim's family. Think about the family of this murdered girl. They thought for 20 years the guy that did it had been arrested, apprehended, tried, and put behind bars. Now you're telling the family that their loved one, they don't know who did it. This person you thought probably didn't do it because we were hiding evidence. Think about that from the victim's side, ripping their lives open again. Sarah Patel, a friend of Syed, said, "We're very happy and relieved that he's finally free. We've just been on pins and needles this whole time. Syed has always maintained his innocence. His case captured the attention of millions in 2014 when the debut season of Serial focused on Lee's killing and raised doubts about some of the evidence prosecutors had used, inspiring heated debates across dinner tables and water coolers about Syed's innocence or guilt. Last week, prosecutors filed a motion saying a lengthy investigation conducted with the defense had uncovered new evidence that could undermine the conviction of Syed, Lee's boyfriend, in 2000. I understand how difficult this is, but we need to make sure we hold the correct person accountable. Well, you should have fucking thought about that 21 years ago, Becky. Well, Becky, you were thinking about whoever was in charge of the case back then, who they hid the evidence. Assistant State's Attorney Becky Feldman told the judges she described various details from the case that undermined the decades-old conviction, including other suspects, flawed cell phone data, unreliable witness testimony, and a potentially biased detective.
I'm sorry, what?
Is that all? You don't have anything else?
That's not as simple as a piece of paper getting misfiled in another file. That's like a file on its own. What the fuck are these people doing? That's monstrous.
They're framing a dude is what this is what the rush to judgment. This is where it gets you. And this is where so much police energy is focused these days. Police and prosecutors, they go, oh, he probably did it. And rather than getting evidence, rather than finding evidence of whether or not this person did it or looking for the truth, they say, we think he did it. And they build their entire case around proving that the person they think did it actually did it, rather than looking for justice, rather than looking for truth, rather than trying to say, okay, it clearly wasn't him. We got to go back to square one and find out the person. This is disgusting.
That is so fucked. I have no words, honestly.
I mean, that's all. The only things that undermined his case was other suspects, flawed cell phone data, unreliable witnesses, and a biased detective. Surely there's got to be more.
All of which was surprisingly not included in this information that was passed off. That's pathetic. That's been deliberate. There's no way there is no way that you accidentally hide that much evidence. I'm sorry. Like I was for a moment there, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a single piece of paper that had been misfiled in another prosecution file, whatever. But that's way too much for it to be coincidental or accidental. Yeah. That's not.
You don't have that luxury here, it looks like.
No.
After the hearing, State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said investigators are waiting for the results of DNA analysis. We had DNA analysis back in 2000. I mean, it was starting to come into the courts during the O.J. Simpson trial in 95. And that was in Marcia Clark was trying to explain it to the jury during opening statements by saying it's like Jurassic Park. I mean, it was young back then, but it still existed.
It was still likely enough that they could have gotten a positive identification. I mean, what is it that suddenly they're able to test it against? I mean, if he's been in prison for the last 20 years, irrespective, if this information's been there, science has progressed in the last 10, 5, 15 years, whatever you want to say. This could have been done a decade ago. He could have been out a decade ago.
So they're going to wait for the DNA analysis before determining whether to seek a new trial date or throw out the case against Syed and certify his innocence. And then how do you make up for 21 years, the prime of his life in jail? You throw a few $100,000 at him and say, my bad. Syed was serving a life sentence after he was convicted of strangling 18-year-old Lee, whose body was found buried in Baltimore Park. The investigation revealed undisclosed and newly developed information regarding two alternative suspects. Read that again. Read that whole sentence again. It revealed undisclosed evidence. That literally, as you all know, means they had it and they didn't disclose it. That's a deliberate act. That is a deliberate act of hiding evidence of his innocence from his lawyers. Undisclosed evidence and newly developed information regarding, undisclosed information and newly developed information regarding two alternative suspects. Two, not just one, two. As well as unreliable tower data. Mosby's office said in a news release last week, the other suspects were known persons at the time of the original investigation, but weren't properly ruled out nor disclosed to the defense, said prosecutors. Not only did they not try to figure out if these people did it or not, they didn't tell the defense they existed. So the defense couldn't make that check. They couldn't make that determination, said prosecutors, who declined to release information about the suspects due to the ongoing investigation.
Oh, well, nice that they're doing the job now, for fuck's sake.
Prosecutors said the failure to disclose the alternative suspects to defense attorneys amounted to what is known as a Brady violation. But Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosch, whose office represented the state during... So, okay, the guy was apparently the district attorney at the time during the appeals, or maybe with the attorney general's office in some capacity at that point, but he's the state attorney general now. The attorney general of the state of Maryland, whose office represented the state during Syed's appeals, issued a statement Monday saying, among the other serious problems with the motion to vacate, the allegations related to Brady violations are incorrect. Neither State's Attorney Mosby nor anyone from her office bothered to consult with either the assistant state's attorney who prosecuted the case or with anyone in my office regarding these alleged violations, Frosch said. The file in this case was made available on several occasions to the defense. So this is the attorney general saying, well, the prosecutor's office, they didn't consult with us. They didn't consult with me about releasing this guy. That shows you how fucking concerned those prosecutors are. That's what they're looking at this document going, I don't really give a crap what the attorney general says. Get this guy out of jail right now. That's how seriously they took this breach. It's like, yeah, we have nothing to talk to the attorney general about. Get him out now. Prosecutors in their defense said they weren't asserting that Syed is innocent, but they lacked confidence in the integrity of the conviction. That means same fucking thing. They're not saying he's innocent. They're just saying they lack confidence in the integrity of the conviction.
There were 2 other fucking suspects. If that's not enough for reasonable doubt on a fucking life sentence, and they're saying, oh, they're not asserting that he's innocent, are you fucking kidding me?
Well, tell me, what is the difference?
Uh-oh. All right. 1, 2. I'm just going to count until he. Is it me?
I'm back. That's me.
Okay, it was you.
Yeah, it's Friday in Korea. Every single male child in Korea is playing some form of online morp game.
Okay, fair enough.
So there tends to be huge amounts of packet loss on the weekends here.
Gotcha.
We should be up. I'm running a packet loss test as we speak. I've got it on my computer speed dial. All right, we are good to go. 0 packets lost now. All right,
there we go.
Back to what I was saying before.
Yeah, we lost about 20 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Prosecutors said they weren't asserting Syed is innocent. Tell me, what is the difference between saying innocent and lacking confidence in the integrity of the conviction? One is a really freaking convoluted way of saying, looks like he's innocent to us.
Well, it looks like there's a possibility that he wouldn't have been convicted. I mean, look, it's a distinction without a difference. Let's be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
The state's attorney office said that if the motions were granted, it would effectively put Syed in a new trial status, vacating his convictions while the case remained active. As well it should. Syed was led into the crowded courtroom in handcuffs Monday, wearing a white shirt with a tie. He sat next to his attorney. His mother and other family representatives were in the room, as was Mosby. In 2016, a lower court ordered a retrial for Syed on the grounds that his attorney, Cristina Gutierrez, who died in 2004, didn't contact an alibi witness and provided ineffective counsel. So his own lawyer was a fuck up.
He has had a massive, this has just been a clusterfuck, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus, no wonder this was a prime target for a podcast series. Fuck. Oh, good. I thought you frozen.
No, I was frozen in shock and rage. But after a series of appeals, Maryland's highest court in 2019 denied a new trial in a 4-3 opinion. So they said, "Oh yeah, you get the new trial." Then you apparently, I guess he lost the appeals because he was still in jail, and then the court says, "Nope, no new trial. You don't get a new trial." The Court of Appeals agreed with the lower court that Syed's legal counsel was deficient in failing to investigate an alibi witness, but it disagreed that deficiency prejudiced the case. Okay, so they're saying even though there's a witness that can place him somewhere else at that time, we're not going to talk to them, but we don't think that prejudiced the case. See, how does it not prejudice the case?
It's a thing that fucks with my head. It's the same as when you got people on death row, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I've seen it on TV before where there's been this point where beyond appeals, it's past the point to consider someone's factual innocence while they're on death row. Yeah. This literally seems like the same sort of thing. They're saying, okay, there was deficient counsel. There's possibility that there's a witness that could have exonerated this guy, but we're going to ignore it because we don't think that it prejudiced the case enough.
Well, it's even, I mean, the gist, the final gist of things like in the death penalty appeals and things is you can come in with someone who said, yes, I did it. Here's the weapon I used, and it has the DNA evidence all over it. there's a good likelihood the court would say, sorry, too late. We're just not going to go back and do this again. You had your chance to bring this up earlier. It's frustrating. It's part of the broken system.
That's fucked. That really just is. I'm sorry. Like, don't get me wrong. There are various scenarios where I could fully support the death penalty. There really are. But where there's those kinds of situations and circumstances, until those are ironed out, I have issues.
Well, this is the only thing that I don't know what happened here. The court said Syed waived his ineffective counsel claim. And if he waived his claim, I don't think he did it consciously, and it's probably something his lawyers did.
You think?
Yeah. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to review Syed's case in 2019. The true crime series was the brainchild of longtime radio producer and former Baltimore Sun reporter Sarah Koenig, who spent more than a year digging into Syed's case and reporting her findings in almost real time in hour-long segments. The 12-episode podcast won a Peabody Award, and was transformative in popularizing podcasts for a wide audience. Now, here we go. Now we're getting into the family stuff here, the family of the victim. Mm-hmm. During the hearing, Hae Min Lee's brother, Young Lee, I live in Korea, I can pronounce these correctly. During the hearing, Hae Min Lee's brother, Young Lee, spoke to the court saying he feels betrayed by prosecutors since he thought this case was settled. This is not a podcast for me. This is real life, he said. Speaking outside the courthouse after the ruling, Mosby expressed sympathy for Lee's brother and said she understands why he feels betrayed. But I also understand.
Save it.
Yeah,
Jesus
but she also
Christ.
Understands the importance as the administrator of the criminal justice system to ensure equality and justice and fairness. So this is entitled to the defendant as well. Yes. So here we have this guy, and this was the 20th, so there is now 19 days from today for the prosecution to decide, are they going to just cut him loose, give him a certificate of innocence, or are they going to recharge him and retry him for this crime? This should have happened at the original trial. All of this should have been there. It disgusts me when prosecutors are more concerned about the win, more concerned about closing the case and putting things to rest than finding the truth. You should be fighting for justice and truth and the American way, just like freaking Superman. But you're not. Defense lawyers, the public prosecutors, they don't lose their jobs if they get conviction rates really, really high, because it's just kind of basically understood that everybody that goes through the public defender's office is by and large guilty, with very few exceptions. Prosecutors, however, if they don't get that check mark in the win box, they lose. They can be fired from their job if they're the DA and they don't get a lot of convictions out of their lawyers. They can lose the next election for being soft on crime and being incompetent. They need those wins. They need the W's, and they'll do shit like this.